Welcome to Springfield City Club. This week, we have Professor Reza Rejaie. Is that correct? Yeah. Professor Rejaie is a professor and head of the computer science department at the University of Oregon and a founding associate director of the Oregon Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. With over 3 decades of experience in networking and cybersecurity and many distinguished credentials honoring his significant contributions to computing research, Professor Rejaie applies his expertise to advance both academic research and real-world practice, working closely with public and private partners. Last time we met, he talked about cybersecurity, and today he's here to provide his thoughts and perspective on the topic of artificial intelligence or AI. So please welcome Professor Rejaie.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here again. We had a conversation about cybersecurity last time. This is about AI. I hope you find it helpful. I know AI was a focus, was more of interest, and cybersecurity was something that I added to the topics because it was near and dear to me and everything else that was going on. So the purpose of these talks and the framing of this talk is basically is meant for general audience to inform them about AI, how it affects our daily lives, what it's good at, what it's not good at. And it's at the high level, it's not going to be technical. But the main purpose and the main focus of the talk is to inform you about AI and how it affects you and how it affects your decision making and go forward. So I focus on that part of it more than technical because I thought that's probably for City Club is a better focus, as I mentioned in my abstract that I shared. So with that said, let's get it started. So I'm not sure if the font size changes across different things, and I'm gonna read some of these, but I apologize if some of these fonts are small on this this monitor. So I think a good place to start is why are we even talking about this? I think all of you have different reasons for caring about AI, but let me just summarize some of them. There are a number of tools that we use on a daily basis. ChatGPT, self-driving car, medical diagnosis that are using AI. There's probably heard of deepfake that affects many people. So these are tools out there, powerful tools out there that affects us every day. They're publicly accessible. You can go use them right now. And these are all enabled by AI. There are other trends that make these tools available. One of them is a huge investment by different sectors of the society in this area. And investment enabled two major trends over the past decade. One of them was major breakthrough in performance of computing over recent years. So we have now much more powerful computing devices that can go through lots of data very quickly, train models, develop AI tools and all that, that was not available as much 10 years ago to the public. There are also, one of the reasons that people are interested about it is both excitement and fear that is created by media coverage. AI is going to do everything. Our future is going to be very different, and some people are fearful about how AI is going to take away things that they have right now, including their jobs. So the main point that I like to convey is that this is not just a technology trend. This is not just a technology issue that affects engineers and keep engineers busy. This is really a societal shift because of issues that I just laid out. So many things are going to change the way we do approach our daily lives. Different tasks or capabilities are going to be significantly affected, and it has societal implications. So, well, a good place to get into the details is, what is AI? Because we are using this term rather loosely everywhere, I think it's better to establish some a clear definition for what it is. So basically, AI is a computer system that performs tasks that are similar to the tasks that humans perform, making decisions about things, deciding things, selecting things, suggesting things, right? So that's basically a high level, but if I want to get a little bit more technical, at its core, what an AI system is a computer program, computer system that can learn patterns in data. Give it lots of data, it goes through the data, look at some common pattern, and based on those common patterns, if it sees something similar to those patterns, it says, I've seen this before. This is a particular thing. And I'm going to elaborate on that more. So, in a nutshell, a program goes through lots of data, learns patterns, and then utilizes those patterns for making predictions. So a critical element is having obviously a massive amount of data, and then once you have those patterns identified, the essence of using those patterns is making predictions. And I give you a bunch of examples so you see how to in regard. So sum it up, what AI is a computer system trained by lots of data to identify certain patterns and using those patterns to make predictions. And by the way, please stop me at any time if something is unclear, you want to add something, you want more clarification, you have a question, please feel free to interrupt. So that's kind of a general public definition of AI. Obviously, there are a lot of details on how you train, what is the model, how the model is tuned up, and things like that that I'm not getting into. Well, the immediate next question is, okay, you have a system, you have a program that learns pattern and predicts. What is it good at? The quick answer is it's good at anything that you can use patterns to do. Okay, so once you look at those patterns, you can use them to do image recognition. Given an X-ray, the model has seen millions of X-rays, some with tumor, some without tumor, some with broken, some not broken. And then if you give them a particular X-ray, it can look at them and says, this one has a tumor. This one doesn't have a tumor. Again, using the pattern to predict something about a new data. Similarly, for speech recognition or language translation, for speech recognition, if you look at a particular sentence, the model can tell you, oh, if this is a partial sentence, the next word is going to be this. Creating a sentence for you, completing a sentence for you. If you have typed something in your email and then you mistype it, you said, well, you probably meant that. That's an autocorrect that you're dealing with. Why? Because it has seen millions of sentences where in a sentence like that, the next word was something else and assume that you mistyped it. Okay, again, looking at a pattern in lots of data, using that to predict what is the correct, what is the prediction for the next piece. Similarly recommended system. You go to Netflix and then it recommends certain things to you that are different from the one that it recommends to me. Why? Because it says for somebody that is looking at this type of data, I'm just looking at a lot of action movies. Well, I predict this is something you like because people with that type of interest like this one. But if you're looking at a lot of documentary, it predicts that for somebody with that history of viewing is likely to be interested in this particular movie. Again, prediction based on past history, the data that provides patterns says, because of this pattern, that history suggests interest to this, predicting interest to this particular video. Similarly, for shopping suggestion, when you go to Amazon and it suggests, are you interested in this? Are you interested in that? It's the same thing. given your past history and patterns of purchases by people, it predicts that you would be interested in those items. And yes, prediction could be off. I'll get into that now. That doesn't mean that all the predictions are good ones, right? But this is the essence of it. Data is used to learn the pattern, and pattern is used to make predictions. One type of prediction is to generating new content. If you say, write me an essay about Black History Month, right? It has patterns of topics related to Black history. It knows, it learns part of the grammar because dependencies between words that create a pattern. It brings all of them to action and iteratively generates it. Start with a few words, add another sentence, add some other words. It keeps predicting what the next sentence is going to be, what the next word is going to be. And it generates things. Again, generation is done by iterative prediction. What the next sentence is, what the next word is. So, if I want to kind of put this all together, AI is really good at automating a task that is repetitive and relies on a particular pattern that it learns from reviewing lots of data. One other keyword here is that those tasks are typically really narrow, in the sense that if I train a particular model or AI system on text and writing, it's not going to be doing the detecting tumors in images for me. If I train them for medical purposes, it's not going to predict shopping patterns. So they often have a really narrow focus. They're being trained by data related to that focus, and you're predicting behavior for that focus in that context. Okay, is that clear? Any questions? Please.
One that we talked about is making these predictions, and you said they're not always on, but does it also include like a level of confidence in those predictions? Like it can tell you just how certain it is of that prediction.
Give me 2 minutes. If I don't touch on it, ask me again, because it's coming up. I'm glad you asked that. That's a good segue to where I'm going. Just give me a few minutes. Let me just quickly also recap what AI is not good at. So I actually, this is, I think, related to what you're asking. I'll get to what AI is not good at later. I added these 2 slides this morning. One thing that you might have noticed is that if you go use ChatGPT and ask him the same question a few times, you're not going to get the same answer. It's not a deterministic process. You're not going to get a consistent answer. This is different from a program. If you go write a piece of software and run the piece of software with a particular input, you always get the same output. It's deterministic. AI models are not deterministic. I think it's important to say why, which brings up the issue of consistency and correctness and all that as well. So when I have a model and when I give a lot of data to the model, this model, without getting into too much details, calculates certain probabilities. Calculate probability that this particular pattern happens versus another particular pattern. So it's a probabilistic model. I'll give you an example to clarify that in, I think, the next slide. So the probabilities are consistent, but the outcome is not always the same. The other reason that the outcome is different is that once I have the probabilities for the model, remember, for the generative model, I have to keep generating the next thing. The models often add, generative models often add randomness. It's not a deterministic generation of the name. There is some randomness involved in it. And these two, the non-deterministic aspect of the probabilistic aspect of it, along with the randomness, leads to inconsistent or non-deterministic outcomes. Yes, sir.
Well, I wanted to ask because some of what you were saying about the predictive model, made me think of like social media and how they say the algorithm. So how does this differ from like the algorithm that is used in something like social media? Are
So-
they similar?
So I'm gonna touch on social media use of AI in a few minutes,
Oh,
but let's just
okay.
put that to rest at the high level.
Okay,
The word algorithm in the conversation that we hear in public is used kind of really broadly, but in a more technical term, algorithm is a set of rules
Mhm.
that you define and then a particular software program follows. Algorithm by themselves are deterministic, are consistent, are stable. Giving an input, you get the same output.
Mhm.
I can write an algorithm that has a randomness as a part of the algorithm.
Mhm.
So for example, I have an algorithm that if you give me a word, with 80% likelihood I pick to go left side, and then 20% likelihood I pick to go right side. I'm just making something high level. If the algorithm has randomness in it, the outcome could also vary. So in general, algorithms are more deterministic. AI, for the reason I mentioned, is not deterministic. But I'll provide example specific about social media, and hopefully it touches on what you're saying. If not, please bring it up again. So these are the reasons that generative AI tools, if you use them multiple times, they're not going to give you exact same results. Now, let's take a look at an example. And I created two examples here. Hopefully they're large enough that you could see. In one example up there, we provide a lot of data about, geography and all that to a model, and the model has probabilities associated with different parameters. So if we ask the capital of France is, if it wants to predict the next word in that sentence that has been trained, there is a 92% chance that it picks Paris, there is 5% chance that it picks Lyon, and then so forth. As you see, the probabilities are really skewed. One of the values has a much higher probability, right? So these are things that are sort of low variability and more factual, right? It's not something that we perceive it as, there's no randomness. The capital of France is Paris, we know that. But for the model, it says 92% of the time when I've seen this, Paris come across. In other cases, other things came across. So it's not factual for the model, it's just probability. But the probability is really high. 92% is really high. But let's take a look at another example. Let's say you have another sentence you want to complete, and the sentence is the movie was. That sentence could go to many places, right? It's not as clear as capital of France. So the next word could be in a model, the next word could be great. 25% of the time, it could be terrible, 22% of the time, and so forth. So you see, this is an example of something that the probability of next options are much more even across multiple choices. Whereas things that are more factual, more dominant, there is still probabilistic, but the probability of certain outcome is much higher. And I want to be clear, again, this is a classic example of probability. What I mean by 92% here, or let's talk about 92%. That means that if I ask the model a question 100 times, that first question, 92 times it's going to tell me Paris, 5 times it's going to tell me Lyon, 2 times it's going to tell me Marseille, and so forth. So when you're asking, how can we get an error? You get an error because in unusual cases, in rare cases, with low probability, you may get a response that is probabilistically okay. It's unlikely, but you happen to be the one who is getting that unlikely outcome. Does it touch on your question?
Yeah, just
Yes.
So I guess what we might be saying is, since the model gets trained on a huge number of data points in language, you could get one person who, for some reason, said Marseille was the capital of France.
Yeah, this is coming from the data. This is coming from the data, and this represented data. I'm gonna sort of reflect on that more and more. But yes, this represents the data. Probabilities come from the data. Okay, so So now, please.
So why is it that there are certain, you can almost invariably pick out something that was written by like ChatGPT because it tends to use the same words, like step, unwavering. So there's like certain words that it just, even when you say, please don't use these words, it tends to default to those words.
Yeah, so the question is why?
Yeah.
So this is a model. As I said, I'm just gonna go back to my same line of reasoning. This is a model. It's being trained by certain data sets, millions and millions of articles, writings, and all that. And people might have also further tuned these probabilities. If I train a model and I have the model, I can still go open a box, sort of as an analogy, and fine tune some of these probabilities to make certain things happen more often. I'll touch on that later. But this is a model that reflects how it's trained, how those probabilities are defined, extracted or tuned. And because of that, you see certain things more often. I cannot tell you whether it's because of data or whether it's because of further tuning. I don't know, but that's driven by those probabilities. Okay, so okay, going forward. So now, what is AI or AI systems are not good at? I think the high level answer is anything that requires input more than just pattern and prediction, AI is not going to be good at. And here are some examples. And most of these examples are things that requires either reasoning or human touch, if I want to sort of broadly categorize it. So as I have on top is common sense. So if you have done certain things many times, but then you face a situation for the first time, there are some principles, some common sense that you have built as a human that now you try to apply to these new conditions, right? And now we are referring to common sense in general knowledge that we have that we apply. Now, AI does not have a way to deal with a pattern or a situation that it has not seen. Tell me something I've seen, I predict what happens next. If you ask me something I haven't seen, at best, I'm gonna just throw something at you. I'm not confident. I'm just gonna throw something at you. So if it is not a common event, if it's a new situation, it doesn't have a notion of common sense like humans do to deal with these events. So there is no notion of, again, true understanding or awareness. There is no understanding with AI. There is a pattern, that pattern predicts. It's not like you understand the situation. You know that, hey, I asked you this question in the context of space, not high school. I asked you this question because on this particular, it was related to the weather, not related to, I don't know, economy. When I say forecast, I didn't talk about weather. There is no awareness. It's just matching things, matching predictions, relating prediction pattern. And I think the one that is probably most obvious and most important to us is the notion of kind of moral or ethical judgment. There is no such a thing. When I define AI system, I never think that there are morality into it or there is some notion of judgment. It's data, pattern, prediction. So if you're expecting morality to come out of that prediction or that question, it's not even part of the system. You may perceive it to be, you may say that, oh, what I heard here is ethical, that's fine. But that's because data said so, data indicates so, data dictated that. Not because the system is built in some morality principles or rules or anything. And I'm going to talk about responsibility a little bit more, but there is a whole set of issues that if AI says something, if AI suggests something, who is responsible for that outcome, especially if you're acting on it? I'm just going to mention that, but I'll go back to it with a lot more details later on. And then if you're thinking of information and sort of a cause and effect relationship between things, that is not part of AI. AI doesn't maintain rules in terms of X is a root cause for Y. It is just looking at pattern. Because it looks at pattern, it can spot correlation. What do I mean? At night, when I have seen the data at night, images at night of roads, there were less cars. It's correlation. At night, there are less cars. At night, lights are on. It's correlation. It does not establish cause and effect. That's correlation. So it can tell you about the correlation, but it struggles to explain or reason about those. It cannot tell you why people turn on light at night, but it can tell you whenever I've seen this phenomenon, I've also seen this phenomenon. There's a pattern of coherence. Okay. So, and the other thing that, again, I'm sure you see, whatever AI tells you is with confidence. This is the information. This is the result. This is the right version. And for those of you who dare to challenge ChatGPT, you see that in many occasions it tells, oh yeah, this is a really good suggestion. Let's incorporate it. Can we say this later? Can you remove this? So yeah, I see that. That's a good idea. We should do that. Then you're wondering, why didn't you do that in the first place, right? It's a generative model. It's not consistent. But the way it's presented to you, there's always notion of confidence, and it makes you think, oh, this must be right. And now that you know how it was generated, at least you know that, well, there are a number of reasons to question that and try to fine tune it. I'm gonna again touch on that a little more. Now let's just go through. Again, I have several examples of how AI is used. Sorry, again, these are getting a little small. I was mindful of this font size, but I thought many of these are interesting. And since I'm sharing the slides, I wanted people to be able to see those examples. So again, we talked about some of the examples, but let's touch on some of the other ones. I want you to frame every one of these examples as a prediction. If you don't see it, then I was not able to properly convince you that it was prediction. So you have to see them as prediction. I'll try to touch on some of them. So smartphone autocorrect. I already told you, you write something, AI could correct it and say, no, this is what you meant. Why? Because the probability to see that word in a sentence like that is high. So it replaces your word. Shopping product or a music recommendation. See what you have watched or listened to. I know the pattern of people watching things. These are the things you're likely to enjoy. Object detection, face recognition. I have seen lots of pictures of cats. This is a classic example. Right? You show me a picture of cat, I say there's a cat in here. Or I've seen lots of pictures of your son. If I see a picture of your son, I can say he's here. And when you go to your Google photo, you still see every now and then it says, hey, by the way, are these two people the same? Because there are cases that it cannot be the high confidence map them because of probability, right? But again, it's prediction. Joey is in this picture. There is a cat in this picture. This is a prediction. And there is a probability associated with that. Email spam filtering. I've seen lots and lots of emails. You give me an email, even an email, I can predict whether it is a spam or not with some probability. Let's see. GPS navigation. So our traffic prediction. Given a particular route from here to your home, I can give you the probability based on past data and all that. What is the better path? What is the likely level of traffic? We can bank fraud detections. I've seen a pattern of transactions to your accounts over time, or to a similar customer account over time, millions of them. And this particular pattern, this particular transaction seems off, given the order that it appears, amount, source, all of those things. Right? Again, prediction. Social media feed algorithm. Again, I can suggest friends to you, predicting who you might be interested in following, what you might be interested in saying, what you might be interested to comment on. You go to LinkedIn, you go to the window, they said, oh, These are the responses that you can say. Many people say those responses, right? And the healthcare images, I already mentioned that you look at a lot of images and then you can say this one has a particular tumor or a particular problem. So we touched on this already. Many of us using AI, either directly or indirectly, a lot more than we may realize. Okay, and this brings up a lot of issues that I'm gonna touch on. I'm not trying to just get the established understanding of AI before I get into the topic of what we can do about this. I quickly mentioned this, I wanted to say a few more words about this. Again, the one way that you could use prediction is in a class of AI systems that is called generative AI. They're generating something. Examples are ChatGPT, there are image generator, there are code generator, software code generator, and so forth, right? You ask them, write me a program that does this. Show me an image that this and this exists in dancing or whatever it's gonna generate, right? So again, what it produces is based on prediction. I touched on this quickly, I'm just going back to it and I want to make sure everybody's with me on the details. In the sense that when you produce text, image, audio, you could, many of you are using Instagram, many of you are using Spotify for music, I do. And I remember listening to this, and then there are weekly recommendations that you get. And I was listening to this artist and wow, who is this person? And I attributed not knowing to me not following details. Quickly sent to my teenage kids, who is this person? And the image responded that this is AI. Because now a lot of images, a lot of audios, a lot of videos are being produced by AI. Okay, again, how are these being produced? AI knows the patterns in an image, in video sequences, in an audio, and then uses those to keep generating. You give it a topic, you give it a framing, the constraint, then it start generating. Add a piece, the probability to what the next piece could be, where it should be located, how I can add it, how many of them I need, and just probabilistically populate that image or that video or that audio. And there are a lot of tuning opportunities here. I'm not getting into those details. But you learn the pattern, and then all of a sudden you have a bunch of patterns in your disposal to govern things to look like what you want to get at the end. So, and if you're wondering, so what are these dependencies? The dependencies, for example, if you're thinking of a text, is among between words. So it's predicting the next words for you, as I mentioned earlier. If it's an image, it could be dependencies between pixels of the same color. If you're thinking about audio or video, it could be dependencies between frames. And remember, we are looking at hundreds of millions of videos. We are not talking about like 10 videos. So statistically, you see dependencies, and those are the probabilities that I mentioned earlier. Or a code, what are different lines of code? What are different sections of the code? So this is helpful. And I'm gonna have some recommendations later, but it is really useful to use generative AI as a way to draft your message, as a way to brainstorm, as a way to summarize, and do the basic version of the work you could do quickly, but then you work on fine tuning it, cleaning it up, adding things, removing that word that you like, and then fine tune it. So do not rely on AI to finalize things for you. Have the AI do the heavy lifting of the basic element, the first version. And then you go and make it your own by making the changes that you know are appropriate. So there is a way to use them without giving everything up. That's what I'm trying to say in terms of using these tools. And we already touched on it. What are the type of things that, I haven't mentioned this. So when you do generate things using generative AI, what are the type of things that could go wrong? I mean, some of you have already touched on, sometimes things are wrong. So first of all, there is something called hallucination of a model. You might have heard the word used even in technical domain that, oh, this model is hallucinating. So hallucination basically means that the model is fabricating facts. He's saying things that are simply not true. Okay? Give you an example. So actually, my brother-in-law is working at the company that they used to generate bots that would talk to you on social media. So you don't need to have somebody sitting and talk to you, the bots kind of go back and forth. And then you could be talking to these bots for months. It is kind of your companion. I don't know why people want to do that, but that's beside the point. And then after you talk to this bot and then I was asking him what are the challenges and things like that. And he said, well, Reza, after a few weeks, things are good. You tell him something about yourself, the bot responds as if a human does. But then after some time, it all of a sudden asks you something and you go like, whoa, where did that come from? Why are you asking me about legal issues? I mean, there is no legal element in our conversation. There wasn't any sport in our conversation. There wasn't, I never told you I have kids. Why are you asking? You know, this is hallucination, establishing or talking about facts that does not exist in the data. Creating an image that has a dog with 5 legs. It's just, there is no such a thing. You're hallucinating. The model is hallucinating to create that. A subcategory of hallucination is inaccurate citations. I might be saying that, oh, Blake has known to have said this. Oh, there's no indication anywhere in the data that is used that Blake has said this. But the model makes that up. And these are examples of things that will basically get off rail. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, often, I mean, when you get an outcome from the model, is always confident, oh, this is correct. Even when they're wrong, that here's a dog with 5 legs, and this is dog for sure. So anything you get from the model, they're confident that it's correct. And again, I'm going to touch on this a little more. A model is as good as the data that you use to train it. So if your data has biases in it, the model is going to have those biases too. If the data says people who are white have less traffic violations, the model is people who are white have less traffic violations. That's how I was trained. Okay, so I'll touch on that a little bit later. And the other issue is these models are always, any models are always vulnerable to manipulation and basically fooling them. So there was this research done several years ago. This is called adversarial AI or adversarial machine learning. And they're saying, yes, we all know if you show an image of cats to a model that has been trained by images of cat, it tells you there is a cat in this image. And then they were saying, because we know how the model works, because we know the inner working of the model, we can compose an image that is essentially noise. When you look at it as a human, you say, what is it? There's nothing in there. There are just a bunch of pixels. But they say, this is a bunch of pixels that can fool the model to say there's a cat in this image. So there are ways, if you know the inner working of the model, that you could create an image that has nothing to do with the reality, with the context of the image, but has everything to do with those probabilities that all the model to conclude that a particular outcome exists or a particular image. So again, because of this error, it's always important to consider AI as a smart but unreliable companion or intern or helper or whatever you want to call it. I think it's always wise to verify what they produce, especially if there are consequential decisions you're making. So, very quickly, benefit of AI, it accelerates a lot of research right now. because many of these research tasks requires going through ton of data. First of all, one of the new trends is that we have lots of data now. Because of devices, we have a lot more X-rays now than we had 20 years ago. We had lot more speech audio than we had 20 years ago. We had a lot of videos that we had 20 years ago. All of us are recording everything. So there is a lot more data to train on. Okay? And because of AI, we have the ability to go through those data sets, identify important patterns and use them, and that accelerates the process of finding common useful patterns. And these are not the patterns that you and to your eyes would be obvious. So that accelerates research on many areas such as medical and drug discovery and so forth. It provides services that we didn't have before. Translation, speech tools, all of that we did not have before. It increased productivity. Instead of having human do things much slower, now you can have AI quickly make a decision on common patterns, predict things, and speed things up at lower cost. It could detect problem in transportation and lead to safety, switching trains in the right way and all that, that otherwise human, their judgment might miss. And it could be used, these are some of the exciting uses, is personalized education and tutoring. I don't know if you have seen, you have seen this in piece of news recently. There was a piece of news that people have put some of the common training tools, identified them by AI and put them in iPad and took them to rural areas where teachers do not have enough time to spend with individual students because they need one-on-one attention. One student has a problem with grammar, one student has a problem with some other aspect, but then they have these tools that is trained by all those issues. And I give an iPad to one student, iPad to another student, and this student start interacting with iPad individually. And then the feedback you get, the suggestion you get is specific to you and how you reacted with that tool. Essentially, you have a customized, individualized tutor for yourself. That's awesome because there is no way to duplicate that teacher to work with 20 students at the same time. So these are instances of use cases that AI could be really valuable and amplify the capacity, capability that we have to do different things. The key word is, are we sure we can do that responsibly? That's kind of the key word. All right, so now I'm going to talk on a few aspects of AI benefits before I go to list of things that you could be doing. So on the economic side, well, the impact is that obviously using AI, you could do automation, a lot of common routines that are repetitive. Check this, review this form, detect whether this particular thing exists. Is this valid? Is this not valid? You don't need a person to sit down and do it. And if they're tired, they might make a mistake. This is a machine. If it's a common problem, it tells you this common problem happened because they have seen that millions of times. Another economic impact is the augmentation of AI into decision making. I use that actually all the time. Now, if I want to run something, I know what I want to do. I run it by AI. If it confirms I have another data point that what I'm doing is data, with respect to data, is also consistent. But sometimes it tells me, oh, be aware of this thing too. So, oh, okay, I haven't thought about this aspect of it. I'm glad you mentioned it, so I incorporate it. So it would be helpful in planning and decision making. One thing that is important is that we keep hearing about AI is going to take jobs away, and there's so much hype around it. I think there is also an understanding that first, some of these jobs are likely to be transformed. So I don't think we're going to go from human doing certain things all of a sudden to fully AI automated version of it. I think the transition between these two steps is the one that human use AI to make the decision quicker, more accurate, more efficient before we go to the full automated version, if that happens. And then as a result of that, you can imagine certain new roles emerges that we didn't have before. So I won't be surprised if many companies have AI tuning, AI auditing, AI check that comes and checks these tools. think of an AI system as a lift truck. If you're using lift truck in Costco, you probably want to have an engineer to check these lift trucks every month, because otherwise you're gonna have an accident. So the same with the AI system, they are tools. You need to have people to come and check these tools and make sure they remain tuned and behave well as you go forward. Again, I think it is more likely, and this is an opinion, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it's more likely that most jobs first evolve before they fully disappear. So this is, you definitely cannot read this slide, but I'm gonna touch on it. This is in my opinion, some concrete examples of how AI affects specific jobs in different sectors. And I included that because I think these details resonate. This might be the only thing you remember after this talk, that, oh, that job, now I have an example of how it might be affected. So if you have a healthcare job and you can have AI assist the diagnosis and documentation, but you still need a doctor to confirm that was correct, the diagnosis was correct. You cannot afford to dismiss the doctor there. Why? Any idea why? I have a diagnosis, I know what went wrong.
Prediction, probability.
No, it is a prediction, but why do I still need a doctor?
Because they need to treat you.
No, if I'm going to radiologists and all they want to tell me is that they saw a tumor, AI tells me there was a tumor.
Somebody has to cut the tumor out or.
No, that's the next step. That's not,
You don't care about this step?
it might not be right, obviously,
Yeah.
and if it gives me the wrong information, who is responsible? The doctor has to check that and ultimately be responsible for the diagnosis, because I'm not gonna go do all those chemotherapy just because AI told me to. So education, I mentioned there are some customized tutoring that could replace some of the functions or help customize some of the training. In the area of law, there are opportunities to review the documents and accelerate that process, but still you need human judgment. If you're making to, have a judgment on a specific person that send them to prison, you better make sure that decision is checked rather than just a machine is making it. In manufacturing, obviously, combining AI with robots is gonna facilitate and add efficiency. Again, you need technical skills to be able to run those equipments. There is a customer service we are already using, probably talking to AI, not realizing it in many cases. But then, if you're asking a simple question from that customer service, you get an answer. But if you have a little bit of a twisted situation, good luck. Because they haven't seen that version of question or that particular thing. So let's see, creative fields, you can always ask AI to produce something artistic for you. Doesn't have a human touch, it's just probability in action. And for government, government may use AI tools to come up with decisions and policies. This policy is gonna affect us, so somebody better check those policies and make sure how they're producing. And I'm gonna touch on that a little bit more. So again, as you see on many fronts, it could be, and this is not an exhaustive list. And that's why you hear almost every day that in Wall Street and in many sectors, they're embracing for AI. They are just racing to incorporate it any way that they can, even if it's nonsense. It's hot. I want to use it. I want it to be part of my company and attract any benefit that it could bring. All right, so my goal with this talk was not to kind of provide a balance. I don't like to be alarming, and I also don't want to create a really rosy picture that is unrealistic. So I told you a lot of good things about AI and limitation. I want to also share with you some of the concerns. I'm going to elaborate on some of these. One of the major concerns is misinformation and deepfakes. You're getting a lot of content that appears to be valid and genuine, but it's not. I'll touch on that a little bit more. I already mentioned the issue of bias. Decisions that are made by AI is likely to be biased if the data had bias. There are privacy issues. You keep talking, if you have a ChatGPT account and you keep sharing your information, that ChatGPT model knows a lot about you. The question is, do you want that information to be out there? Because now ability to process data is much more available and AI tool can detect pattern and all that, it is likely that we have increased surveillance. It's much easier to detect the face in the crowd now than it was 20 years ago. Because it's a face detection. There are environmental impact that we haven't talked about, and I'm going to touch on. So one of the things that I'm not going to say more is just on this slide in concentration of power. So imagine a world 5 years from now, 20 years from now, that there are certain AI tools that are really popular. We have 5 versions of ChatGPT, and all of us are using it for many reasons, many purposes. So if you think about that, the company that manages, trains that model, runs that model, tunes that model, has a lot of power because they're controlling a lot of decision making that are done with their tool. This is a lot of power to be in the hands of just a handful of companies and making societal decisions, government decisions, health decisions. I show you some of the areas there, it goes in, it sort of touches on all fronts. So the societal impact in terms of who has the power to control these tools that are affecting many aspects of our life is also critical. So I think the main sort of overarching issue is AI is going to have sort of governance and societal issue aspect of our life. It's not just technical issues. It's not detail of the model, it's how it affects many other aspects of our life, which is critical, and I think should be more interest to all of us.
One question.
Please.
Copyright protections, how is that impacted by the protection of ownership of information?
So I want to train my model. I'm going to use your article or your photo or your video or your artistic work to train my data. So any pattern, information, knowledge, art that was in your document is now integrated in my model. There is this whole discussion now that do I need your permission? I essentially stole that set of patterns. Let's just call it patterns that now I can benefit from without your permission. But there's a whole discussion that whether it's legal, it's ethical, and how it violates copyright law. Because I'm not presenting your image or your drawing out there to sell that. There are distilled pattern that I'm getting from it. It's not exactly the same thing. But would that exist somewhere else? I'm not answering your question, but I hope I'm pushing you in a direction to see how this could not be a black and white issue.
There's a lot of legal battle going on
That's right,
right
yeah.
now, with groups like Disney and authors guilds and
Because, yeah, go ahead.
Well, another question about one of your bullets, but that's on environmental impact. Is that talking about the power?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
For all of these, there's a slide coming, yeah. Okay. So how are we doing with time?
We're at 5 minutes and 1.
Oh, okay, so let's speed up. So misinformation, you have deepfake. The key problem with misinformation is that now you could easily produce a video or audio in a minute. The barrier to produce this information is much lower. So I can have a video with your face in it. I can have an audio based on your voice and call somebody and so forth. So I can impersonate people. And as a result, you see that it leads to declining public trust. People don't trust when they get a call or at least in the image. They have a second part. Yeah. So again, seeing is not, or hearing is not no longer believing. AI and bias, again, I touched on this. AI learns from the data that is used for training. If there are bias in training, as a result, the decision by AI is going to be biased as well. If there are hiring tools that you want to use AI for, and you train your past hiring decisions, if you were biased against certain type of applicants, the model is also going to be biased against those applicants because the pattern, your data is what you did in the past. And this bias is not because of the model, it comes from the data and for the broader social biases that exist in our society. And the data reflects that and the model is gonna duplicate that. Again, technology models the society because it comes from the data that was generated by the society. Privacy. Again, by using AI tool, we give up a lot on privacy. These tools are collecting our information, are collecting our audio, collecting our video, images and all that, detecting our faces. And every time you go to Google Photo to your phone, that long form that comes and you say yes because you quickly want to use the form, you give up on that privacy. You say, sure, use my face, use my video, use my photos. And as a result, your information, such as the copyright, are used for training this model for your benefit and others. And then there are out there data brokers that collect this information and God knows what they do with it. And then we are trading for privacy for convenience. The question is that is it worth it? Maybe it affects us the same way that cybersecurity attacks affect us and we don't know this affects us and we don't realize it here. So as far as the government use, there are again tools, AI tools used for government decision, policy decisions. For example, if is this person eligible for this benefit based on that? Again, if they have biased data and have biased result, assessing the risk of freeing someone. Is somebody with this track record should be released or no? Should be keep him with bail or not release him at all? Or again, we can do budget forecasting and there are a lot of uses there. The problem is these are decisions that affect the community as large. So it's, do we have transparency that we often demand for this type of decision? If I come and tell you here's a policy, you go read the policy, you say I disagree with this part of it, this part is going to affect certain people a certain way, and then you question it. When you have a box, AI box that is making that decision, you don't have a way of doing that. And that's one of the challenges. And that results to lack of transparency, lack of oversight, and accountability when you're using those.
So a quick question on that.
Yeah.
You mentioned algorithms earlier today, rules that get run. I assume that people can, or companies can use algorithms with their AI to kind of skew their output.
In which way are you using algorithm? You're using algorithm to filter certain things, yeah, you could always use algorithm to dismiss certain things. The AI is, so here's the distinction. If you know what to look at to make a decision, if the age is this one, income is this one, prior record, all of that, make that decision. That is algorithm. If we are looking at pattern of things beyond that, that is not obvious to human, but it was in the data, AI comes in. So it has to be more subtle than meet the eye and our intuition. So energy question that was asked. So we are talking about lots and lots of computers crunching this data to train, to respond to a question to ChatGPT, to do all sort of prediction. They're using a lot of computing resources. Most of these are sitting at data centers that are using lots and lots of electricity. And as a result, this electricity generation, and if it's used coal or whatever, it's going to be a carbon emission that it's going to have is going to affect us. Many of them need major cooling support that often use water, and it might leave something to the water sources that has other implications. And we need more and more computer. We need rare minerals that are very limited. You probably have heard that China was one of the main sources of them, and now with our relationship being soured with China, then we need to go get more of those resources. And again, this is an environmental issue. So as we are expanding the use of AI, it's gonna affect our environment in many ways. How significant, how critical still needs to be managed and seen. As citizens, what you wanna watch for, I think these are perhaps obvious by now, is when you see an AI system used, you wanna know who built this. What data was used? Was there bias or intention or conflict of interest involved? If a particular company creates a model that is being used by that company, for that company, obviously they have a benefit there, right? What data they use, are there certain groups that can benefit from outcome of this, whether it being government or a particular company or a particular group? Who is accountable? If something goes wrong, who am I gonna go and take to court? Who is responsible here? And this is really relevant to ethical AI. If a self-driving car hit another car, who are you gonna complain about? The person who developed the model, or the car manufacturer, or somebody else? Is there a human oversight for this? Is it a model that works by itself, or there's a human in the loop that checks what it does, and as a result, there's check and balance, and which is, as we said already, in high stakes situation, there is a human in the loop to check that. And whether there's a way to appeal that decision, and who you're gonna appeal to, and so forth. So there are some serious issues that as a citizen you wanna think about. As an individual, it's important to not blindly trust what AI tells you, and we talk about this, you're already doing that. Make sure your personal data is protected, because if not, either for copyright issue or personal issue, it's gonna be in the model. Be skeptical about something that you see out there. Just because 1,000 people say something, that doesn't make it correct, because it might have been generated and echoed by AI model. And always use AI as a helper, not as an authority. Get their input, make a judgment on it. The key here is that you need to take personal responsibility, and it makes it make sure that use of AI strengthens societal resilience to these type of challenges. All right, so I'm not gonna touch on all of this because we are out of time. I just want to emphasize that because of all these reasons, AI literacy is important. That's why a meeting like this is important. So at least we have some common understanding of what AI is, what it can do, what it cannot do, how it affects us. So we do proper decision making that has far-reaching impact on us. AI is a tool. It's gonna amplify our ability. Its future depends on how we decide to utilize it. And the technology does not determine our destiny. Our values and our policies should do that. So I think it's important to put all of that in perspective and make sure we shape the use of AI and so forth. So benefits are real for AI, risks are also real. I want to make sure I leave you with a balanced view of AI. There are benefits and there are also risks, and human judgment should be in the loop to make sure we do this right. With that, I'm going to end and happy to answer questions. And there are some sort of questions that I think are typically asked, and I put them up there in case it helps. But I'm happy to answer that. Right. Please.
I got myself mired in reading an article yesterday about Claude.
Well,
Claude,
what?
which is the AI system developed by Anthropic.
Okay.
And they predict them or cast themselves as ethical AI. What do you know about that?
Yes, I don't know much about them honestly, because there are so many of. If you go search, there are probably thousands of AI related startups these days doing all sort of things. And their selling point is that I'm using AI. But how you use it, what data, why is it better, ethical issues, human in loop, accountability, they don't want to talk about those. Those are difficult. Training a model is easy, and I have AI in the title of my company or somewhere, and then you're gonna buy a stock or whatever, invest. I'm not saying there are not good stuff out there, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying we have to do the diligence to make sure that everything is checks out. Sorry for going over time.
Okay.
And I'm gonna be here in case the question you wanna ask, I'm happy to answer the question. If not, thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's a lot to digest.
And it's always hard that when you want to present it, you have to balance